here I provide the students with a list of compounds. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur trioxide on the left, and a list of formulas on the right. And what I ask my students to do is, assuming these are names of legitimate compounds, what can you do to tell me some of the rules for naming compounds based on what you can see there? And so what we do is we generate some rules. So hopefully you and I are going to generate some of the rules that we might get from this list. So I'll let you go first.
All right. So we always, I think the most basic rule to start off with is that we always start off with the first element in the compound with the name. So if we look at the first one, we start off with carbon dioxide, and it's written with the symbol C and the symbol C for carbon and the symbol O for oxygen. And those work out together.
So your rule is either put the name of the first element first, put the name of the second element second, and put maybe put the name of the third element third, right? Name it in the order that it comes. Okay. So I wrote that down on my piece of paper. All right, I'll give you one of my rules. One of my rules is all of these compounds come from one particular part of the periodic table. These compounds are all nonmetals, or they're made up of nonmetals, right? They come from the right-hand side of the periodic table. That's one of my rules. So first element first, then the second element. These compounds are all nonmetals.
Yeah, and each element that makes up the compound are nonmetals.
Yeah. Okay, what else you got?
You can see with the first element that if there's only one of them, then you just write down the element name. But if there's more than one, like for example, tetraphosphorus digoxide, there's 4 of them, and we use the prefix tetra for 4.
Okay. So you said in the first element, there's no prefix unless there are at least 2 of them. Right? Something
Correct.
Like that. And then you said tetra means 4, right? I don't know. Do you ever see the game called Tetris? Yes. Isn't that 4? Isn't that a game of 4 blocks? I think that's what tetra means. No, it just means the number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are some other prefixes in there that we can get from that list, aren't there? Let me bring it back to you.
Yeah, sure.
So, other prefixes. What other prefixes do you have in there?
I see di, di, like in dinitrogen.
Yeah.
And that should mean 2.
Yeah. And I think most of our students know carbon dioxide, CO2. And so all of this, if they know carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, all the rest of this is entirely manageable, I think. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole load, there's a bunch of them. There's tri. What else do we have in that one? I don't think I have the other ones up there. Like for if tri means 3, then maybe it's a question of what we had 4. Oh, what about 1? Is 1 in there?
For the first element, I don't see one, but sometimes for the second element, if there's only one, such as dinitrogen monoxide, there's only
Right.
mono means one.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are some rules that we can get out of this. Oh, another rule. The second element, we change the ending, don't we?
Yeah. We don't write oxygen. Most of these end in oxygen.
Yeah.
We change the ending to oxide.
So when I've done this with students in person, they always come up with some variation of this same list. Maybe there's one rule that's missing, and maybe students ask the question, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. What about 5, 6, 7, or 8, right? What are those other prefixes or something like that? And so then maybe it's worthwhile knowing that penta is for 5 and hexa is for 6, etc. And we keep, and you can keep on going if you want to, but those sometimes come up, but often they don't. But then what we do is we take that set of rules and we use it to name some compounds on the next page. So if I go back to here's the set of rules. We'll leave them right here. So here's the compounds. In these spots, I could have been writing the rules. Actually, maybe I should have been doing that. And now we try and name some compounds.
All right.
So actually, maybe I'll do that on this screen here as we go along. Maybe that would be smarter. So based on our rules, what do you have for naming these compounds?
So there's only one oxygen. So we start off with oxygen. And we don't need a prefix for the first one if there's only one of them.
Yep.
And then we have 2 fluorines, but we always change the second element, the ending to "ide." So let's first write fluoride because we know that's the element.
So that's fluoride. How'd I do?
We're almost there, but you can see that there's 2 fluorines in the compound, so we need a prefix for it. So this is where going back and remembering prefixes or looking at a list might help. So
sure. Do you want me to bring it back up again?
Yeah, sure. So we see on our list di means 2, so we would put the prefix di. So it would be difluoride. All one word. And so the whole compound name is oxygen difluoride.
That works for me. Okay, let me do the next one.
Yep.
And I'll try to do it the same way you did, which is to say the first element is that P, which is phosphorus. Oh, phosphorus.
Double P. It's okay.
Yep. And the second element is second, so that's chlorine. And I've got three chlorines, so I'm going to call it trichlorine. And I'm going to remember that I have to change the INE to IDE, phosphorus trichloride. For some reason, there's an extra period in there. How does that look
looks
for you?
good to me.
Okay. One more, and we'll move on.
All right. So the first element is carbon, and there's only one of them, so we can just type out carbon. And then the next one is chlorine. So there's chlorine. It's not C and I, which is tricky sometimes on Word documents, but usually isn't what's being typed. But getting back on track, there's 4 of them. Our prefix for 4 is tetra. So it would be tetra, and we have to remember to change the "ine" to IDE.
Carbon tetrachloride. So I've found that my students are quite capable of taking the data, right? The data is the names and the compounds, the names and the formulas, and coming up with and generalizing those to a set of rules that they can use. And that gets you through a ton of compounds and a ton of nomenclature.
Yeah, that works out.
Okay, let's keep on going here. So back to the screen share, bring it up. And okay, here's another set of compounds. So what are the rules for these compounds, do you think?
Just by looking at them, they follow the same first rule I mentioned with the last group of compounds. That first element is named, and then the second element is named.
Okay.
But something that's a little different from that last list is I don't see any prefixes to quantify how many elements there are.
Right, so there are no prefixes here, and so there's obviously something else going on, and you and I and some of our students know the thing that's going on is that this is when we have metals bonded to non-metals, right?
Right.
And so this has a different set of rules, and it doesn't involve any prefixes. Which
is kind of nice if you don't.
Well, it probably means that there's something else that we have to worry about. But
yeah.
That gets
I think there's also another rule too that's similar to the last one, in that the second element, you change the INE or its ending to "ide."
Right? Something like that. Okay, so we got a set of rules. Let's do some naming.
You want to take this one first?
Sure. All right, so I've got two elements. First element is calcium, second element is chlorine. So I'm going to start off with calcium, chlorine, and I'm going to make good taste to do it all in lowercase, and I'm going to call it calcium chloride.
Do you need a prefix before the chloride, or do we not?
I think we don't. And one of the reasons I think we don't is because I know that calcium is a metal from the left-hand side of the periodic table, and chlorine is a non-metal from the right-hand side of the periodic table. So these ones follow the set of rules this one follows the set of rules that we were just working
on. Okay.
Fair enough?
That's nice to know.
Okay.
I'll do the next one then.
Yeah, BeO.
So Be, that's the symbol for beryllium. So that's the first element. We type out beryllium. And then the second element is oxygen. But then I have to remember to change the ending to IDE. And oxygen is IDE. We take out the Y because the endings aren't the same with chlorine, iodine. So we just do oxide.
Right. Hey, does beryllium have two L's or one L?
Let me check real fast.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the spell check's not picking it up, but it looks wrong to me. But
two L's.
Okay, excellent. There we go. Okay, apparently I was wrong. I was wrong that it looked wrong. Okay, all right, I'll do the next one. SR is strontium. And BR is bromine. And so I'm going to call this one strontium. bromide. And the reason I know that is because strontium is a metal over in the left-hand side, column, group number 2, and bromine is a non-metal in group number 17 or 7, depending on which system we're using at any particular time. So we can use our rules and we can name those compounds.
Yep. Thank goodness for our rules.
Thank goodness for our rules that we made up, right? We're smart enough. I'm smart enough, you're smart enough, our students are smart enough.